Sheraton Hotel downtown terminating 7 employees. Many had been there for decades, as Dave Charbonneau tells us.
Mohammed Alam received one of the letters sent to senior employees of the 263-room hotel, which is one of the largest in the city.
I worked more than 30 years, and that was my family. And one thing made me very sad is I didn't do anything wrong.
Sean McKenney of the Ottawa Labour Council says this is a strange decision not to extend the layoff recall.
The union has approached all of the other hotels that it has an agreement with, and there was no problem to extend that recall.
CTV News tried reaching the general manager of the Sheraton, but she has yet to respond. The union says the hotel is still open with a staff of roughly 9 employees. Dave Charbonneau, CTV News.
So what happens next for these employees, or if it happens to you? Let's bring in Alex Lucifero, employment lawyer with Samfiru Tumarkin. Good morning, Alex.
Morning, Leslie.
All this was done legally, I'm guessing?
Well, in the context of a unionized environment, Leslie, so it's important to remember these employees are unionized, and so if the collective agreement, if the agreement between the union and the employer allows the company to terminate these employees in this way and dictates what kind of severance they're going to be owed, yes, unfortunately, for many of these employees who are, long service, 30-year employees, yes, it's going to be completely legal, and unfortunately, their severance entitlements are going to be based on whatever the collective agreement says, as opposed to, for example, their age, position, or years of service.
Now, recall is the issue here, the layoff recall. If and when this is all over, maybe not if, but when this is all over, and then they're going to start hiring again, do they get first call, and do they make the same amount of money they had for the last, 30 years? That's the increases would go up, or do they get a younger, cheaper workforce going in there, potentially?
Yeah, not necessarily, Leslie. So when your employment is permanently terminated like this, the relationship is over. As long as proper severance is paid, then that relationship is done. There would be no recall at that point in time in the future. Now, what I imagine the union might do is argue that if the employer is trying to, let these long service employees go, perhaps they're earning more money because of their long service, and bring in newer employees that they can pay less, and perhaps those employees might be, non-unionized, well, then the employer or the union rather would have an argument there to say, well, you just tried to basically oust the union from the work environment, and that can potentially be a challenge and a problem for the employer.
What typically is severance when you've been working as that one employee we heard there worked there for 3 decades?
Yeah, so in the private sector, Leslie, so for non-unionized employees, your severance is going to be based on your age, your position, and your years of service. And so the longer you've been with the same employer, the older you are, the more senior or specialized your position, the more severance you're going to get. And if we are talking about a 30-year employee, we're probably talking about 24 months, not weeks, Leslie, months of severance pay. Now, that is the private sector, as I just mentioned. In the unionized context, an employee's severance, however many years they might be employed with the same company, their severance is going to be dictated by the collective agreement. And from a lot of the collective agreements that we see on a daily basis, Leslie, usually an employee's severance entitlements are basically their kind of minimums under the Employment Standards Act. So it might be something in the range of about 34 weeks. So, and that's where a unionized environment, that's a downside of being unionized. When it does come to severance, usually a unionized employee's severance entitlements are very limited. Unions do provide job security, that they provide, probably better pay in a lot of situations. But severance is one area where it's actually better off to be a private sector employee, a non-unionized employee, than to be a unionized employee.
Lots of information there. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate